would like to request you to return to your seat.
Different types of units, tribal units, and others which don't make as much sense anymore, that they've got to be firmly condemned, and we can't look away from it, and we've got to look not just at the good things in our community, but to address the bad ones, and to understand that other religions are doing the same. That means we're not to simply look at
adalah suatu pandangan yang mempengaruhi Bapak Alan dan termasuk juga belajar tentang toleransi modern dari sini yang sesuai dengan adat kita dengan bahasa
hak dan martabat setiap manusia. Kami mengundang Anda untuk menyimak seluruh rangkaian kegiatan ini melalui kanal resmi PBNU, Televisi Nahdlatul Ulama.
Without further ado, I would like like to invite our moderator, Dr. Timothy Samuel Shah, as the Director of Strategic Initiatives, Center for Shared Civilizations Value.
Good morning, distinguished guests, distinguished friends of Indonesia. A warm good morning. Selamat siang also to our Indonesian participants. We're delighted to be having this discussion about what values we need to develop to ensure peaceful coexistence and why. I am Dr. Timothy Shah, Director of Strategic Initiatives for the Center for Shared Civilizational Values, and I'm proud to say that the Center for Shared Civilizational Values serves as the permanent secretariat for the R20. Perhaps, as you can guess from my clothing and also from my beautiful wife, Rebecca, I'm a proud son of India, and maybe you can guess from my accent that I am also proud of my American background, but you may not know that I'm equally proud, and I'm delighted to say this on this occasion, to be a proud friend of the Republic of Indonesia, a proud friend of Nahdlatul Ulama, a proud friend of the Humanitarian Islam movement, and if I may say so, a loyal disciple of Gus Yahya, Kiai Haji Yahya Khalil Stakuf. And it is a great privilege to be working alongside Kiai Haji Yahya Khalil Stakuf and his leadership and his efforts, his vision to build a movement for shared moral and spiritual values through the R20 Summit. As you've already heard, the theme of our plenary session now, plenary session 5, is what values do we need to develop to ensure peaceful coexistence and why. I suspect those of us who are married know that unless they develop certain new values that they did not have before they were married, it will not be possible to enjoy peaceful coexistence in one's marriage. The values that we may have had when we were single, before we were married, need to develop and change. And we need to develop new values if we're going to live peacefully and harmoniously with our spouse. In the same way, I think many of us recognize that in our world, in our increasingly globalized world, in our increasingly interconnected world, the human family really inhabits a single household. And if we are going to enjoy harmonious, peaceful coexistence, we need to learn to get along. We need to learn new values if we're going to have not just the absence of violent conflict, but if we're going to have a true fellowship and live as a human family on the basis of justice and truth as well as compassion. After the horrors of the Holocaust and World War II, the entire world realized that it had to develop new values and embrace new values if the horrors of World War II, the horrors of genocide, the horrors of horrific fascism, totalitarianism, nationalist tribalism, if those horrors were not to be repeated, and if the world was not to be plunged again into world war, new values had to be developed. And so the whole world, as Professor Marianne Glendon discussed yesterday, needed to embrace together a set of new values. Values of national self-determination, which was not a consistent value in the past. Respect for the inalienable and intrinsic dignity of every human being, a value that had not been universally recognized in the past. And so these new values were, as Professor Glendon noted yesterday, adopted and identified and articulated, for example, in the United Nations Charter and in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. But today, 75 years later, we are conscious that we need a new effort, a new push to gather all of the world's cultures and religions and civilizations into a common endeavor to identify and embrace those values without which we will not be able to live in peace as a single human family. In some sense, this is not a matter of inventing entirely new values, but this may be a matter of building on old values, developing and nurturing and articulating old values in new ways in order to enjoy peaceful coexistence. The Church, the Roman Catholic Church, of which I am a follower, articulated this very beautifully in its document Dignitatis Humanae in 1965 at the end of the Second Vatican Council. The Council said that in articulating its teaching on religious liberty, it was drawing on the sacred tradition and doctrine of the Church, and I quote, "the treasury out of which the Church continually brings forth new things that are in harmony with the things that are old." New things that are in harmony with the things that are old. So in a sense, our question is, what are the new things that we need to bring out of our respective religious, moral, and civilizational traditions that are in harmony with the things that are old, but also necessary in order to live peacefully and harmoniously and on the basis of justice in our new and very dynamic and challenging global environment. Without further ado, I'm delighted to introduce and welcome the members of our panel, and I'd like to ask them to come join me on the stage, who will be addressing the questions that I've just been raising and articulating. So without further ado, I'd like to invite the Reverend Dr. Thomas Johnson to come forward, the Most Venerable Kotapitiye Rahulathera, Marcella Szymanski, Dr. Peter Berkowitz, and the Reverend Paolo Benanti. And as they come forward, I will introduce each of them, and I will introduce them in turn immediately before they deliver their remarks. So let's please give them a warm welcome. I'm delighted that these extraordinary panelists, scholars, and leaders represent a kaleidoscopic and beautiful diversity in terms of religious tradition, cultural background, as well as national background. And I'm delighted that our first speaker will be a very, very close friend and ally in the building of the movement for shared civilizational values. Indeed, the Reverend Dr. Thomas K. Johnson, who is our first speaker, is a great friend, one of the greatest friends, I would say, of Indonesia and the Humanitarian Islam movement and the Center for Shared Civilizational Values that we have anywhere outside of Indonesia. The Reverend Johnson serves as Special Envoy to the Vatican and Special Envoy for Engaging Humanitarian Islam at the World Evangelical Alliance. And let me just point out that the World Evangelical Alliance represents over 600 million Protestant Christians in 143 countries worldwide. A widely published author on theology, ethics, and human rights, Reverend Johnson also serves as Senior Theological Advisor to the World Evangelical Alliance, and significantly, he's also the co-chair of a joint working group that Humanitarian Islam, the Humanitarian Islam movement of Nahdlatul Ulama, established formally with the World Evangelical Alliance in 2020. Among his many, many books is a significant recent book in which he explores possible lines of collaboration and commonality and partnership between the humanitarian Islam movement of Nahdlatul Ulama and the World Evangelical Alliance, and that book is entitled Humanitarian Islam, Evangelical Christianity, and the Clash of Civilizations, a new partnership for peace and religious freedom, published by the World Evangelical Alliance Theological Commission. And let me just say one more thing, which is that Reverend Johnson, an evangelical theologian, has literally spent thousands of hours studying carefully the documents of Nahdlatul Ulama and the humanitarian Islam movement. And he has come away from that very deep study with a remarkable understanding of and respect for the great humanitarian Islam movement of Nahdlatul Ulama. And his personal study was the basis for the partnership that subsequently ensued. So it's with great pleasure that we welcome you to the podium, Reverend Johnson.
Hello? Yes. We could all be dead in 20 minutes. And if we're not dead, there would be no reason to go on living, because everyone else would be dead. Those were the words of my father during the Cuban Missile Crisis in October of 1962. I had seen on the TV that many of the people talking were very concerned, and I asked him why. That was his explanation. He explained that this was not just a conflict between two men, J.F. Kennedy and Nikita Khrushchev. It was not just a conflict between two countries, the Soviet Union and the United States. It was indeed a conflict between two entirely different ways of life. Though he did not say so explicitly, he was talking about a clash of civilizations, two ways of life of different people that were so different they led to conflict. More than 30 years later, after the Cold War ended without a nuclear apocalypse, we began to hear about a new clash of civilizations. This time, the warnings came from respected scholars at Ivy League institutions, people such as Bernard Lewis and Samuel P. Huntington. And Huntington claimed, and I quote, "The causes lie not in transitory phenomena such as 12th century Christian passion or 20th century Muslim fundamentalism. They flow from the nature of the two religions and the civilizations based on them." After reading Lewis and Huntington, I wondered if our world was destined to endless conflict between civilizations. Endless conflict because of irreducible differences in our religions. But as I listened over 3 decades to thousands of Christians and Muslims and people of other religions, while I was teaching in universities and speaking to human rights organizations, I learned, what I heard is that almost no one wants that kind of conflict. Almost everyone is appalled at the destruction and devastation of war. Even in the people who die in such a war are people of another religion or worldview. I began to see that Lewis and Huntington had not predicted an inevitable future, but rather they had given us a solemn warning. The future will be shaped by the decisions of many people. This conflict of civilizations may not be necessary. I believe that religious leaders have a unique opportunity and duty to show that though we have among us very different understandings of God and how we should relate to God, yet we can develop and articulate shared civilization-building values, and that we can become, rather than the cause of a clash of civilizations, we can become builders of civilization. How can that happen? Well, if we look carefully at many religions, we see that there is a distinction between the things that religions tell their own adherents to do, the members of their own community, and what they recommend as the norms for society at large. This distinction between what's more or less our internal ritual and our norms and expectations for society. I will take myself as an example as a Protestant Christian. As a Protestant Christian, I normally expect to go to church on a Sunday morning, to worship with fellow Christians, and very frequently we celebrate the Lord's Supper, which other Christians also call the Eucharist, Holy Communion. But we do not ask other people who do not share our beliefs to participate, because for us that is a proclamation of the death and resurrection and return of Jesus. And if someone does not believe that, we recommend that they not participate. But at the same time, we articulate norms of love and justice to follow in society. When I talk to my Muslim friends, I know that they see as one of their important religious duties is to participate in the pilgrimage to Mecca. But I know also very clearly they do not want me as a Christian to join them in a pilgrimage to Mecca. That would be terribly offensive. But when we start talking about our norms for life in society, they are remarkably similar, principles of love and justice. So I believe we can, with a little effort, identify ethical societal norms that are different from our ritual norms, and that these societal ethical norms can be very similar among different religions. Put it this way, just as we need a doctor of medicine to cure us from medical ills, we should ask our doctors of religion to cure us of our religious ills that prevent us from developing shared civilization-building values. Now, I propose that we talk in terms of a table of discussion, and that at our table of discussion of civilization-building values, we think of 4 legs standing under the table. 4 legs that support a table around which we are seated as we discuss how we expect each other to live in society. I will articulate this in terms that arise from my Christian faith, but I hope that you, as members of other religious communities, can do so in terms that are consistent, or mostly consistent, with your religious beliefs. So I'll talk about 4 legs of a table of shared civilization-building values. The first leg of that table is what I call the universal law of humanity. When we feel guilt, or when we criticize someone else for doing something we think is wrong, we are normally appealing to a standard that is above the rules of my family or my community or even my religion. We are usually appealing to a law that we think all people will know, a law of humanity. Within Christianity, we traditionally called this the natural moral law. But I'm suggesting that in our multi-religious societies today, we call this the law of humanity. In the Christian Bible, the Apostle Paul makes reference to this when he says that among all nations, people show that the work of the law is written on their hearts. It's a reference to what I'm calling the law of humanity. And this law of humanity is not hundreds of pages in length. In fact, I think it can be summarized in just a few short sentences. Sentences like, do good and avoid evil. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Love your neighbor as yourself. Do not murder. Do not steal. I call these central precepts the guardians of our humanity. They form a crucial leg of the table around which we can sit as members of different religious communities and discuss shared civilization-building values. A second leg of our table around which we should be seated is respect for human dignity. The ancient psalmist asked God, "What is mankind that you are mindful of them, or human beings that you care for them?" He received from God and gives us this answer, You have made them a little lower than the angels and crowned them with glory and honor. Now, as a Christian, I believe that human dignity is a gift from God, given to all people. That dignity is what, in fact, makes religion possible, I think, since, as far as I know, only humans practice religion. And we sense that human dignity whenever we talk to another person. We sense that they are radically different from everything else in the universe. This was the beginning, the foundation for the several human rights movements that started about 75 years ago after World War II. It was in reaction to the horrendous wars and atrocities of the first half of the 20th century. Now, in our time, human rights discussions have sometimes been politicized, people from different political movements. However, that politicizing of human dignity and human rights is only possible because of something real that is behind it and below it, the reality of human dignity that I believe is a gift from God. That should be one of the legs of our table of shared values. A third leg is protecting foundational human goods. Scholars from both Islam and Christianity have identified several basic human goods that civilizations need to value and protect in order for the civilization to flourish. For example, the Sunni jurists Imam al-Ghazali and Imam al-Shatibi described 5 basic human goods. They listed faith, life, progeny, reason, and property. Then these goods should be protected by laws and moral norms. Now, they were, I believe, interacting with the Christian scholar Thomas Aquinas, who lived in between the two Muslim scholars I quoted. He described 5 foundational goods as life, procreation, social life, knowledge, and rational conduct. Now, if you place those two lists next to each other on the paper, they look a little different because the terminology is different. But when you look closely at the content of what they meant, they're very, very similar. That means that we have, at least among Muslims and Christians, 2 parallel, mature descriptions of foundational human goods that should be protected by civil law and by religious norms. This is really important, and that forms a leg for our table of shared civilization building values. The fourth leg, I would suggest, has different names among different peoples. We can call it the practice of virtue, or nobility of character, or the fruit of the Spirit. To respect our neighbors, to follow the law of humanity, to protect basic fragile human goods, we need to be the right kind of people. Each person, every one of us, has to transition from our childish destructiveness toward becoming our best selves, toward practicing our God-given dignity. Within Christianity, we talk about putting on the fruit of the Spirit, exhibited by such qualities as love, patience, kindness, gentleness, and self-control. Some of my Muslim friends talk about learning nobility of character. And thoughtful people from many religious traditions talk about an ethic of virtue, of becoming the kind of person we should be. Now, we must train ourselves to become that kind of person, and that should be an important function of all of our religious communities. If we fail in this area, the alternative is that we all fall into the will to power with which we were born. When I look at my own grandchildren, one of the first things I notice is the will to power, seen when they begin to do anything. They have to grow out of that to become mature, responsible human beings. We all need to go through that development. So my conclusion is that today, here we are in Bali. We're seated around a table. And the table is not only the table of good food and nice hospitality and friendship and beauty. We're also here to articulate civilization-building values. Now, I will not be bothered if someone says, well, you talked about 4 legs of the table, we need to add number 5. Or if someone says, you talked about these 5 human goods, and we need to talk about maybe a number 6, that there's one more human good that we should protect. That will not bother me. But I believe we have to take on the challenge that lies before us. We have to honestly sit together and talk about the values that will make our civilizations flourish. And the alternative is a clash of civilizations, and the clash of civilizations could end in an apocalypse. So, will we gather together around the table and talk about how we should live, or will we merely fight in a way that's worse than animals? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Reverend Dr. Thomas Johnson, for that magnificent, cogent, and concise articulation of shared values that really can be the basis for peaceful coexistence and cooperation across the world's religions and cultures. I'm delighted to welcome as our next speaker a great, truly venerable scholar and spiritual leader from the beautiful island of Sri Lanka, where I have enjoyed spending time myself over the years. He is the Most Venerable Dr. Kotapitiye Rahula Thera. He is the Senior Professor and the head of the Department of Pali and Buddhist Studies at the very distinguished University of Peradeniya in Sri Lanka. He is the General Secretary and the Deputy Prelate of the Supreme Sangha Council of Kotte in Sri Lanka. The Most Venerable Rahula Thera also had previously served as president of the Sri Lanka Council of Religions for Peace, which is affiliated to the International Religions for Peace. Furthermore, he is highly respected by people of all races and religions in Sri Lanka because of his leadership in the promotion of peace, national reconciliation, and world religious harmony. It is a great honor to welcome you, Most Venerable Dr. Rahula, and let me also say it's an honor to welcome several other guests from Sri Lanka, the Venerable Galkanda Dhammananda Thera and Reverend Dhammarakita. Welcome, and welcome to you, Most Venerable Rahula.
Thank you very much, Professor Timothy Shah. Good morning. Selamat pagi. Namo Buddhaya. Assalamu alaikum. Most respectable religious leaders, especially my Indonesian best friend, Most Venerable Panyavaru Mahanayaka Mahatero, who's sitting here. His Holiness Swamijis from India, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I express my pleasure regarding the organization of G20 Religion Forum Summit, which has been organized by Muslim World League and Nahdlatul Ulama Central Board, is held today for the first time in Indonesia. Even before the dawn of Buddhism, the fivefold policy, Pancasila, had existed in the society, and the Buddha tried to explain it further. Most of famous rulers in the Eastern world have followed this policy to increase the values of their countries. King Dharmasoka, the great Indian emperor, is one of them who socialized this in the 3rd century AD. Modern Indonesian constitution exhibits the best example regarding this policy. Therefore, I am happy to present this policy of Pancasila to the world, which is greatly appreciated by Indonesia. First of all, I would like to suggest that the fivefold policy is a valuable concept contained in Buddhism that anyone can practice in general. It confirms that this is not limited to any particular group of people, race, society, or religion. Abstaining from killing of living beings is the first. Due to lack of loving kindness and compassion, people act for their own benefit by selfishness. Based on that, people engage in killing others. The 4 major emotions common to any living beings are the will to live, reluctance to death, disease for pleasure, and aversion to suffering. Through killing of living beings, above mentioned common emotions are damaged. As religious leaders, we must be dedicated to securing these sensitive and innocent wishes of every being. As an importance, this policy is exactly not limited just to non-killing others. This includes to eliminate sticks and weapons, to be ashamed of evil, to be compassionate, loving flora and fauna. Today, weapons are manufactured to promote wars and conflicts among communities. Toxic chemicals that harm beings and the environment are also released in abundance. There are violations of rights of all living beings because the universe belongs to all. Therefore, the first policy guides to us spread loving kindness to the entire universe and to all who live in the regardless of divisions based on races, religions, cultures, or countries. The second policy is refraining from stealing. This includes various attempts made on own things belonging to others in a large scale. The destruction of other people's material resources, civilizations, cultures, or concepts is also an extension of stealing. Acquiring local resources in poor countries through various tactics stands out among them, as well as invasion of countries is also directed towards stealing. He who owns that belongs to others does not live forever. There is only temporary enjoyment in it. Therefore, this universal reality of temporality should be understood. We can then create a world for others to live without fear and doubt. The third policy is to abstain from wrong conduct with regard to sensual objects. If the resources valuable for the fulfillment of human needs are used to harass being or the environment or narrow desires from personal to the global level, it is a misuse. Since medicines are to heal people, it is a misuse. If they are used to make people sick, today, a measure of modern science and technology can be observed since they are mostly used to harm all living beings. The Buddha's ideal thought is worth mentioning here, as all individuals or environment should not be harmed, even the remnants should not be harmful objects to others. Moreover, misbehavior in action, speaking and writing have also affected violation of rights of others through sexual misconduct. Many conflicts have been created in personal and family lives. Rape, child abuse, and social diseases have also become rampant. Therefore, this third policy should be put into practice to seek solutions for above problems by building a society that respects ethics and morality. The fourth fact is abstaining from false speech. Detachment from the misbehavior associated with this leads to social welfare. Actually, reliability is the best of relatives. In order to live without fear and doubt, trustworthiness must be where we live, as well as in association with others. It is based on being truthful and honest. This foundation collapses through falsehood. Therefore, this has a very negative effect on society, from the individual to whole world. On the other hand, the false speech has a potential to turn an innocent man into a murderer. That is why the Buddha stated that there is no crime that is a liar cannot commit. With the advancement of communication, mainly through social media, lying is rampantly spreading. With this, we should be wise not to accept anything without proper evidence, because it can lead to conflict among each other. The fifth is the abstinence from the use of alcohol and drugs that change the natural state of man. In the past, people used them to certain limit. Many countries are in serious trouble to turning these into businesses and mafias. There is a growth in many crimes due to the addiction of young lives to drugs. Through using them, non-communicable diseases also have increased at an alarming proportion. Considering them, this is a trigger for many antisocial offenses. Therefore, this is a threat to health. morality, wealth, and welfare of the mankind. According to my point of view, this will be a serious issue in the future if everyone does not reject this as an ethical acceptance. According to Buddhist theory, for virtues of trustworthy, morality, generosity, and wisdom are important to maintain happiness and harmony among the world's different races, religions, cultures, and societies. Building trust in each other helps to live without fear and doubt. The morality is crucial for a just and law-abiding society. One should be generous to respect the opinions of others without thinking that only one's own opinion is correct. The practice of wisdom must always be directed towards acting interreligiously in this modern complex world. The above fivefold policy would be helpful in developing these qualities. Therefore, I believe it is very worthwhile to socialize this to build a better world. It is a pleasure for me to come to a country like Indonesia, which is nourished by this Panchasila concept, to address you representing all religious leaders. May all the beings be happy and healthy. Sabbe satta bhavantu sukhitatta. Terima kasih.
Thank you for that beautiful reflection, Most Venerable Rahula Thera. A beautiful reflection by a great Buddhist scholar on the philosophy of Panchasila, which is, of course, originally from the Buddhist tradition, but is also the basis, the official ideology of the Great Republic of Indonesia. Our next speaker, I'm delighted to introduce, is Dr. Peter Berkowitz, who is the Tad and Diane Taub Senior Fellow at the Hoover Institution, one of America's most respected research centers and think tanks, which is affiliated with Stanford University. In 2019 to 2021, Dr. Berkowitz served as the director of the State Department's policy planning staff. He also served as executive secretary of the U.S. State Department's Commission on Unalienable Rights, and he also served as senior advisor to the then Secretary of State, Michael R. Pompeo. Dr. Berkowitz studies and writes about, among other topics, constitutional government, conservatism and progressivism in the United States, liberal education, national security and law, and Middle East politics. He's published numerous books, including on the history of political thought, a great study of Friedrich Nietzsche, a study of liberalism and virtue, among several other books. And in 2017, in honor of his achievements, he was a winner of the very prestigious Bradley Prize in the United States. On a personal note, I have to say, and I'm delighted to confess before this diverse, distinguished audience, that the most important fact about Peter Berkowitz for me is that when I was a very helpless and confused young man studying political theory as an undergraduate student at Harvard College, I had one very, very generous, helpful, extremely patient and clear teacher, and that was Peter Berkowitz. He was my guru, you could say, in political theory when I was a young man. Now that I'm a helpless and confused older man, he continues to be my guru, and I'm delighted, on a personal note, to welcome to the platform Dr. Peter Berkowitz.
Thank you very much, Tim. It's great to be here with you. It's been a disquieting and dangerous year in world affairs. Consequently, we owe a special debt of gratitude to the Indonesian government, whose nation's motto in the old Javanese language, Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, unity and diversity. Thanks to the leadership of Nahdlatul Ulama and the Council of the Center for Shared Civilizational Values, and in partnership with the Muslim World League, with its Muslim World League co-host, Indonesia reaffirms the principle of unity and diversity with this first annual G20 Religion Forum. By inviting to Bali, this place abounding in natural beauty and warm and kind people, citizens from around the globe and representing a variety of faiths to explore religion and our shared humanity, this forum takes a stand against the forces that would divide us into warring tribes. It inspires confidence that we can fortify unity by a better understanding the marvelous diversity of peoples and nations, and that we can honor diversity by more fully grasping the enduring principles that make unity among peoples and nations possible and desirable. In 1948, the UN General Assembly approved the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Since then, human rights, the rights inherent in all human beings, have become the international language for discussing human dignity, the freedoms that belong to all individuals, and the irreducible responsibilities of citizens and governments. The UDHR presents religious liberty as a fundamental freedom. The first article states that, I quote, "All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights." Article 2 provides that no one shall be deprived because of religion, quote, "the rights and freedoms set forth in the Declaration." And Article 18 affirms that, quote, "Everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. This right includes freedom to change his religion or belief, and freedom, either alone or in community with others in public or in private, to manifest his religion or belief in teaching, practice, worship, and observance." The UCHR does not ground human rights in religious faith or theological doctrine. However, by recognizing religious liberty as a basic right and fundamental freedom, the UDHR fosters respect for faith and the diversity of forms that it takes. But all is not well with the state of human rights, and not only in countries that reconceive them as collective imperatives and flagrantly violate them. In the United States and in other rights-protecting democracies, ideas have grown in popularity that erode understanding of and dedication to human rights, including the right of religious freedom. Some critics on the left contend that universal claims about Western civilization and liberal democracy provide cover for colonialism and imperialism. Critics on the right maintain that universal rights claims serve as a pretext for imposing progressive political preferences at home and abroad. Both sets of critics make the same mistake. They refuse to distinguish between universal principles and the abuses to which those principles are subject. Meanwhile, nationalism attracts keen interest in the United States and in other liberal democracies. This is legitimate and in some respects welcome. The UDHR supposes the peoples of the world will organize themselves into independent nation-states, that nation-states serve human dignity, but by allowing individuals united by a shared history and sense of political destiny to pursue distinctive visions of the common good, and that nation-states rightly give priority to their citizens' security, freedom, and prosperity. But we mustn't forget the temptations that nation-states face. They are vulnerable to supposing that their unique traditions confer special privileges and prerogatives, giving them authority to repress dissenters at home and impose their dominions on other peoples. To enable nation-states to respect human dignity in its multifarious expressions, we must preserve the domain between government and the individual. In civil society That means families, neighborhoods, houses of worship, and all manner of voluntary associations. People learn to enjoy the blessings of community, care for their needs and those of others, advance shared interests, and cooperate on behalf of the common good. At the same time, we must remain attentive to that which endures above governments and the individual. Universal human rights principles both limit and obligate the state. In recent years, disparagement of universal principles and confusion about the reach of nationalism have widened the partisan divide within liberal democracies. Under the influence of both, fellow citizens inclined to view one another as adversaries rather than partners in a common enterprise. Acrimonious discourse becomes a way of life. Tribalism, according to which one's highest loyalty is to one's social and political group, gains ground. This poses a mounting threat to that unity within diversity on which not only liberal democracy depends, but also a world order that respects the sovereignty of nations and the universal rights of individuals. Observations such as these impelled then U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo in the summer of 2019 to create the Commission on Unalienable Rights. The Independent Commission's purpose was to reground America's commitment to human rights in the nation's founding principles, in its constitutional traditions, and the obligations that the country took on in 1948 when it voted to approve the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The 11 commissioners included members of the Jewish, Christian, Muslim, and Mormon faiths, Democrats, Republicans, and independents, professors of law, philosophy, comparative literature, African and African American studies, and sociology, Jewish and Muslim clergy, government officials, and activists. We disagreed about many matters, but we were united in the conviction that human rights were central to the American constitutional tradition, a source of political cohesiveness and national strength, an integral part of a responsible foreign policy, and the common property of mankind. We hope that our report would prove useful, not only to Secretary Pompeo, State Department colleagues, and fellow citizens in America, but also to friends and partners around the world. Beyond providing insight into America's distinctive rights tradition, we wanted to invite other peoples and nations to undertake a re-examination of their traditions as we had of ours. We were confident that they too would find moral, philosophical, and religious resources to affirm the dignity of individuals and the rights human beings share. The Commission operated in the spirit of Jacques Maritain, the eminent French Catholic philosopher. He wrote an introduction, as Marianne Glendon mentioned yesterday, to a 1948 UNESCO volume, it was called Human Rights, Comments and Interpretations. It featured essays from around the world. On the basis of those essays, Maritain affirmed that it was possible to secure agreement across borders and cultures on a small set of human rights. But, he emphasized, it was to be expected that the agreement would be reached by a multiplicity of routes. Peoples and nations would reason from within their own distinctive cultures and traditions to arrive at a common core of universal principles. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights holds that, quote, that human rights should be protected by the rule of law, but the UDHR is not itself intended as the statement of formal legal principles. Rather, it presents, and I quote from the preamble, a common standard of achievement for all peoples and all nations. Individuals and societies, the UDHR urges, shall strive by teaching and education to promote respect for these rights and freedoms. Let us then, gathered here in Bali for the first annual G20 Religion Forum, carry forward the work of cultivating respect for human rights through teaching and education. Inspired by Indonesia's national motto of University within Diversity, let us cherish our own traditions while reaching outward to the principles that reflect our shared humanity. Next year marks the 75th anniversary of the publication of UNESCO's report on the possibility and desirability of international agreement on human rights. It also marks the anniversary of the UN's approval of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Today, amid resurgent threats to a world order that is grounded in respect for independent nation states and dedication to universal human rights, these anniversaries provide an excellent occasion to convene another group of thinkers representing the world's many and varied regions and faiths. They should write a new round of essays. By drawing on their distinctive traditions, contributors can vindicate anew the essential human dignity and these basic rights and fundamental freedoms through which peoples and nations can bring politics better in line with justice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Berkowitz. I'm delighted that our next speaker is someone who is seeking to take the principles that Dr. Berkowitz just articulated, principles from Article 18 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, principles such as freedom of thought, conscience, and religion, and other universal human rights into the halls of power and decision-making, and that is indeed the theme of her talk. Our next speaker is Dr. Marcela Szymanski, who is with Aid to the Church in Need, a pontifical foundation created after the Second World War to assist beleaguered and needy Catholic communities, particularly in Europe, but which now helps Catholics around the world who are suffering persecution and other forms of very profound need. My dear friend, Marcela Szymanski, who is a proud daughter of the great country of Mexico, is a compelling and very powerful advocate for the need of the world to better embrace and better respect the values, the fundamental values of freedom of conscience. She is, among many, many accomplishments, this is a very short biography, she is the editor-in-chief of the report, Religious Freedom in the World, published by Aid to the Church in Need International. She has been an effective and an indefatigable promoter and defender of human rights over a long career spanning some 25 years. She has been a human rights defender, a public affairs professional, and a journalist. She's directed the Advocacy Office for Aid to the Church in Need International, again, the Pontifical Foundation dedicated to assisting Catholics around the world since 2011. On behalf of Aid to the Church in Need, she has been active in Brussels, in Washington, and in Geneva. She is also an advisor to public and private entities on matters of religious freedom, and she works with the Center of Studies for Impunity and Justice at the Universidad de las Americas on Puebla in Mexico. She's been named one of the leading Catholic leaders of 2022 by the American Catholic publication, The Catholic Herald, and we're delighted that she'll be speaking to us about bringing moral and spiritual values to bear in institutional and governmental decision-making, a topic on which she is most eminently qualified. Please join me in welcoming Marcela Szymanski to the lectern.
Dear brothers and sisters, I have been put the question of how to bring moral and spiritual values to bear in institutional and governmental decision-making. I am first of all grateful to the organizers of this event and by the choice of this topic, because acknowledging a problem is a very good place to start solving it. And recognizing our own positive and negative effects as believers on this institutional and governmental decision-making is the best way to begin a good conversation on how to solve them. This conference bears witness to the fact that the global acknowledgement of that the basis of religion, the human search for truth and transcendence, deserves global engagement. It is really very moving to see all of us gathered here. So I am extremely happy for the opportunity to consider together like the question that I might ask myself every day when I jump into the fore of political environments and media and discussions about those who are persecuted for their faith. We all realize very well and very quickly when these principles and moral spiritual values are absent from the political arena. Nobody has to tell us, oh, these immoral people. We know it, we feel it. As many of our speakers have been saying, it is written in our hearts, this human law. So we are always trying to find solutions about that, how to make realize that it is important to apply these moral values in every single decision. Leaders are missing in action. As Peter Berkowitz was saying, we are losing the leadership. We have to consider how to act by ourselves. And my conclusion over 30 years of working with this type of profiles is that the responsibility is within our own conscience. We have to search for these moral and spiritual values inside ourselves first in order to be able to project them. Now, how? Here I'm going to go for a non-spiritual example, okay? One of my professional life. In one of my previous lives, I was working for the private sector and I represented the food and drink industry of Europe in a platform to find solutions to the public health problem of increasing obesity in children. The European Union, with all its instances of decision-making, was continuously bombarded by food companies, by medical professionals who wanted to promote obesity reduction operations, and by urban planners who wanted to have more parks built, and by parents who wanted less advertising of sugary foods and drinks. So with a head like this, the European Union said, let's create this type of action. Everybody's right, but everybody's also a little bit wrong. So let's create something that we are going to call a platform, and I give you 24 months to agree what you all are going to do, according to your own capacity, your identity, your mandate, in order to reduce that problem, and you have to agree among yourselves. I mean, everybody wanted to blame another one, but it was not possible. It was clear that everybody had to do its best possible effort to find the best possible solution without becoming something else, without becoming some diluted form of that company or of that profession or of that group. So when we have been hearing over these 2 days, this concern also how to have a dialogue, how to have a balanced relationship without being unfaithful, unloyal to ourselves. So with this in mind, with this non-religious case puts us in front of the dilemma of how to have our civilizational values together without diluting our own faith or without our own belief. I looked at the things that we can bring to that table that Reverend Johnson was mentioning. And I also came with 4 little things that we can bring to that table, and that is going to be our homework for next year, because we have to have been progressing on those elements in order to say, okay, this was worth our time and effort, also to thank the organizers in a concrete manner. So, if you read the news today, you must be depressed or a little bit unhappy. Huh? The rough situation of our world is undeniable. The tsunami of bad news, of sadness, of destruction is coming to us whether we want it or not. So we have to be ready from inside ourselves to give a response and keep providing these civilizational values and be as human and as good, as better as we can be. So, 4 things. Number 1, we believe, all of us, in the paramount importance of helping the less fortunate, the most vulnerable. There is absolutely every philosophy that we have been discussing here, looking for the meaning of life, of the suffering, of the death of our beloved. And we are all shocked by avariciousness, by greed, and then comforted by generosity when we hear so many of these stories. We know that the generosity makes the difference. Who among us is not completely heartbroken when seeing the photo of a child who just lost his mother, drowned in the Mediterranean, or murdered in some village in Africa by machetes? I have to, and Bishop Kuka and so many other of us, we have to see every single day when we are working with the persecuted communities. So this compassion has to be one of the elements that we are going to cultivate in order to make this world a better one. Then, second element, we all believe in the power of prayer. Yes, we do. Some people call it meditation or good vibes. But those of us who summon every day the courage to jump again into that dark pool of the world are somehow sure that our prayers give us energy, that our prayers can change things. And this implies something that even the most atheists can agree at some point, that we actually believe that we are more than flesh and bones. We actually believe that that energy survives us. And we believe, as we say, in the endless life of the soul, the eternal life of the soul. And this belief is what gives meaning to us continuing day after day after day. And that's what reflects our energy and our envy to continue fighting for something that people tell us also every day that it's not worth it, that nobody cares about it, that somebody said it 10 years ago and it still doesn't work. Doesn't matter. We believe that the power of prayer will bring us forth. We pray for each other, we work for each other, and we know that it is going to be a better world. The third element is that we believe in the benefits of fasting. All of us also, we heard from the most vulnerable, for everybody, we believe in the power of abstention, abstaining, the benefits of postponing a comfort, to learn to, not only to become slimmer, but also to bring us closer to the higher power, to the higher form of ourselves, and therefore be able to go faster, go further, continue. So this is something else that we have to share and we have to continue cultivating. And the fourth is that we are also fortified in our humanity and convictions when we are proud of our faith. We should not hide it. We should live it together, individually, in public, in private, celebrate, hold our rituals, invite the others, participate. That really makes us more and more human, and company multiplies the joy and divides the sadness. Let us be proud of our faith and invite each other to these celebrations to support one another. So these 4 elements as homework for our next year. Exercise generosity individually and collectively, spontaneously and in an organized structure. Heal one wound at a time, because otherwise we really become very nervous when we are working in this human rights defense. It can be very hard. Pray, meditate, share the strength of inner peace with one another. Pray for one another. Do it often, and if possible, do it all day. Make our day a continuous prayer. Postpone pleasures with a purpose and rejoice be proud of your faith, invite and celebrate. And remember, life is hard enough. Refuse to make others suffer in the name of God. Let them be free. And in their freedom, they will choose the goodness that they will have seen in you. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Senora Samansky. Thank you very much. Our next and final speaker is an individual who combines remarkable knowledge and expertise in the field of artificial technology and a great, profound spirituality. And he is seeking to bring spiritual and moral values into a domain that will dramatically shape the human future, and that is the domain of artificial intelligence. Our next speaker is the Reverend Dr. Paolo Benanti, who is a member of the Franciscan Order, the third order of the Franciscan Order. He is a professor in the Pontifical Gregorian University, and his topic is called Algorethics, the timeless values of religion and their irreplaceable contribution to the humane and peaceful development of artificial intelligence. As I said, he is a member of the Franciscan Mendicant Order of Monks, the third order regular of St. Francis. He is obviously a Roman Catholic priest. He is an accomplished theologian, and as I said, he teaches at the Pontifical Gregorian University. He currently serves as advisor to Pope Francis on issues of artificial intelligence and technology ethics. Professor Benanti is also scientific director of a newly established entity called the Renaissance Foundation, spelled with AI in capitals, Renaissance Foundation, which was established in 2021 in order to support anthropological and ethical reflection upon the impact of new technologies on human life. The Renaissance Foundation is located within the Vatican City State and is an integral part of the Pontifical Academy for Life. Reverend Benanti, Father Benanti, welcome. We're delighted to have you.
Excellencies and distinguished guests, I have the not easy slot to be the last one before the lunch. But thank you very much for your warm welcome. I'm here in front of you, whom I thank for participating in this wonderful event, to talk about two things: artificial intelligence and peace. Being here with you at the G20 Religion Forum is a great honor for me. It's also a valuable opportunity for I hope that you witness my appeal delivered in this August forum and addressed to the entire human family will lead to the widest possible dissemination of our shared aspiration and agenda, that is about artificial intelligence and ethics. At this point, some slides should appear. They are already there, but not there. Thank you very much. The real problem is, what is artificial intelligence? I'm used to teach a 90-hour class on that, and I know that it's really complex topics because, you know, once you define, company that produce it try to escape from definition to avoid regulation. So I will not be kept in that direction, but I simply would like to try to show you what artificial intelligence can already do now. Artificial intelligence, with one click, can write a paper like the one behind my shoulder. It's made in a fraction of a second, is the best columnist that you can imagine, and it gives a political direction. But it's more than that. The video that is showing now, show on the left part of the side a chatbot that is dialogue with a real human beings. And you can see that the chatbot is using some not sure in the discussion. And it could fake the human beings. It's making a reservation.
We do not have a 12 p.m.
So
available.
artificial intelligence could seem more human than us.
Do you have anything between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m.? Depending on what service she would like. What service is she looking for? Just a woman's haircut for now. Okay, we have at 10 o'clock. 10 a.m. is fine. Okay, what's her first name? The first name is Lisa. Okay, perfect. So I will see Lisa at 10 o'clock on May 3rd. Okay, great. Thanks. Great. Have a great day. Bye.
So, but the machine is not just this. There is something more. The actual level of artificial intelligence can produce something that is much more real.
I am not Morgan Freeman, and what you see is not real. Well, at least in contemporary terms, it is not. What if I were to tell you that I am not even a human being? Would you believe me? What is your perception of reality? Is it the ability to capture, process, and make sense of the information our senses receive? If you can see, hear, taste, or smell something, does that make it real? Or is it simply the ability to feel? I would like to welcome you to the era of synthetic reality. Now, what do you see?
And you can see the machine that is overlapping a fake video and fake voice to a real actor. And the problem is that this ability of faking human beings is not just only that affect unprepared people. Lamoine, a former Google engineer, a believer, a Christian, believed that the chatbot that you saw before has a soul and asked Google to not switch off. It was simple, fire it out. And now the question is, what we can do? We all know that science and technology play a major role in the profound transformation that the world is currently undergoing, particularly in a view of their close connection with the domains of economics and finance. If we subject the role of technology to closer scrutiny, we shall notice that it is affecting and modifying every dimension of the human existence, including social relationship. Today we appreciate the multiple benefits of this transformation. For instance, without technology it will be impossible for us to interact in real time or to enjoy the countless innovation designed and created by the human mind. At the same time, the danger and gray area of technology are more difficult to fathom. For technology is not simply a tool, it's also a weapon. Whether it's beneficial or harmful depends not only on the way we use technology, but on multiple factors that are seldom immediately perceptible. In fact, the devices that we use have become an integral part of the world we inhabit, to the extent that they are practically invisible component of our social environment. Over the past few years, technology has gone through increasingly rapid cycle of development, producing more and more innovation. We have witnessed the digital transformation of technology, the emergence of big data, and an exponential increase of computational power. Thanks to this development, what we might describe as an artificial intelligence spring has blossomed, and now permeates the life of each and every one of us. But the innovation produced by artificial intelligence is not an unalloyed blessing. It also has many neutral and even sinister aspects, which, if it's not harnessed and directed for the good of all humanity, may evolve to its profound detriment. In fact, most people are unaware of the operational procedures of artificial intelligence. However, AI, artificial intelligence, is pervasive and ever more present in countless fields such as manufacturing, healthcare, education, nutrition, security, and other realms that shape our daily life. In short, AI is everywhere. And thanks to its rising power, its role will continue to increase in the coming years. We need to pay close attention to what's happening in this arena, because an enormously valuable tool created by the human intellect can turn out to be a valuable friend, making our life easier. Or it can become an instrument of oppression, used to control, direct, or otherwise influence humanity, especially weak, vulnerable, and less educated members of society. Moreover, artificial intelligence might prove to be all-defining for younger generation, future generation, the elderly, and the poor. This is why, a little over 2 years ago, in February 2020, we launched together with stakeholders of various kinds the Round Call for AI Ethics. This appeal, which I'm making to you assembly here today, is addressed to international organizations, government, institutions, the private sector, and society as a whole. Its purpose is to promote a sense of shared responsibility and encourage a joint effort to create a future in which digital innovation and technology progress foster peace. The development of AI in the service of humankind and the planet must be reflected in principle and regulation that protect people, particularly the weak and underprivileged, and natural environment. The signatory of the Round Call commit to respect its 6 principles. These principles, transparency, inclusion, responsibility, impartiality, reliability, and security and privacy, are the pillars of our work. We call this approach algorithmics. At a time when new technologies are constantly multiplying their application in real life, the Round Call for AI Ethics urges everyone to say, let us think, let us act consciously, let us consider the consequence of our action. Let's try to ask ourselves, do we really want machine to threaten our dignity, our right to live as free as conscious individual, and the legitimate privacy of our personal life? Do we really want all of us to be profiled unknowingly? And do we welcome the advent of a world in which algorithms make decisions based on ethnicity, gender, and age? Is there really no other solution than entrusting artificial intelligence with decision on job offer, loans, or criminal proceeding? Do we really want to unconditionally trust a machine that can create deep fakes, which are false but extremely realistic images, video and audio files that can swindle, ruin reputation, or undermine trust in democratic decision-making process? Should we allow new technology to threaten freedom of association or speech, as we look upon this development with indifference? Summing it all up in a single question, do we really want AI to undermine the foundation of peace and human dignity? Wouldn't it better to opt for an artificial intelligence that proves useful in managing complexity to everyone's benefits, that help optimize resource management, that yields precious benefits in the field of medicine and healthcare, and in the performance of tasks that are too difficult or dangerous for human beings to undertake? The call I mentioned, the Round Call for AI Ethics, it's not aimed to a specific audience that share our religious and cultural tradition. Since its inception, the Round Call has attracted the attention of diverse stakeholders who are really for dialogue in order to build a better world for all. The first signatories of Round Call were Microsoft, IBM, the United Nations Foods and Agriculture Organization, and the Minister for Innovation of the Italian government, that with Monsignor Paglia for Pontifical Academy of Life signed together the agreement. These stakeholders have diverse interests, However, each of them is willing to embrace its share of responsibility and commit to turn the Coles principle into the decisive aspect of their activities. Among the many interlocutors we had asked so far, I want to mention institutions of higher education, places of knowledge that train future generations, and the other religion with which we are engaged in dialogue. There are many people of goodwill throughout the world devoted to the welfare of humanity at large. I really believe, that R20 emerged from such as an impulse and a view of gathering as an opportunity to initiate new dialogues among the diverse peoples, culture, and religion of the world, founded upon mutual respect and shared values. We know that religions play a crucial role in shaping society, where the human beings stand at the center of development goals, both conceptually and practically. That is why we strongly believe the development of artificial intelligence should proceed from a shared ethical perspective, which is essential to building global solidarity and peace. Religious adherents constitute a majority of people living on the earth. We can make a decisive difference. We can be the primary advocates of and joint contributors to the emergence of a world truly blessed with peace. Peace among us, by developing a shared language based upon timeless values that are religious values. Peace with machine, avoiding a radical conflict between Homo sapiens, ourselves, and this newborn Machina sapiens. And peace with the immense diversity of living species that dwell upon this earth, by developing and employing innovative technology that respect the environment in which we live and which we share with so many other life forms. My hope is to launch a movement that will act as a catalyst by favoring an encounter among different perspectives and proposing an open space for dialogue to help us grasp the immense impact that the digital transformation is having on the whole world. My hope is that a global discussion of this topic may lead to concrete outcomes while favoring communication among, at that times, competing stakeholders. But the world does not stop, not should we. The Ron Cole saw the light of day just 2 years ago and is already scanning new horizons. The first horizon concerns sustainability. Our planet, as Pope Francis said, is the common home of the entire human family. The close interdependence that exists between human beings and their social and physical environment is more and more evident. If artificial intelligence is to be present everywhere in our lives, then its development and deployment should not occur without considering this bond. The second new horizon entails engagement with leaders in the field of religion, industry, and engineering. Religion, by its very nature, aspires to peace. If it can open itself to engagement and dialogue, as all of you here today have done, it will find much common ground with those who desire change and aspire to a future of shared peace. Only by working together in pursuit of a common goal, participating in shared reflection and identifying shared solutions, may we leverage our combined influence and thereby shape the development of artificial intelligence in such a way that it benefits our entire planet. Technology has given us the opportunity to gather here, to enjoy each other company, and enrich one another through dialogue and exchange of ideas. Let us leverage the opportunity offered by R20 as best as we can, so that productive avenues for dialogue and the emergence of a movement for peace and human dignity will multiply. I hope that each of you shall find a way to endorse the proposal or Ron Cole for AI ethics, and to collaborate in building a more just and peaceful world. Thank you for your attention.
let me just thank our tremendous panel. We heard not generalities, not platitudes, but we heard very specific, concrete ideas concerning what values and what practices we can put in motion together as we continue to build a movement for shared moral and spiritual values, and as the R20 moves from Indonesia to India, to Brazil, to South Africa. So I'm delighted and would ask you to join me in thanking our tremendous panel for what they had to share. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, moderator and also our speakers. Now we have the token of appreciations. I would like to invite Kiai Haji Zulfa Mustafa to deliver the token of appreciations. All right, for all the speakers, you may come forward. All right. One more time, ladies and gentlemen, we give a big round of applause to our moderator and also our speakers. Alright, here is it, giving the token of appreciation to the speakers and followed by the certificate to all the speakers and also our moderator. And also I would like to invite Ambassador Zuhairi Misrawi as Ambassador Indonesia to Tunisia to deliver the certificate. All right, ladies and gentlemen, now we will have a photo sessions. We have Kiai Haji Zulfa Mustafa and also Kiai Haji Zuhairi Misrawi, Ambassador Indonesia to Tunisia. Ladies and gentlemen, give a big round of applause to the plenary session 5. All right, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and now you may return to your seat. Ladies and gentlemen, for your information that tonight we will have the farewell dinner. So for all of you, we will provide a shuttle at 6:30 to 7. For those of you, we invite you to join us to the farewell dinner tonight.